Let's try that.
Okay, I want to be respectful of you folks, so.
Okay, great. Okay, we are live. So, it's March 14th, 2025, Senate Committee on Institutions, and we are here today to
I'm
discuss.
sorry, what's the
Sorry.
day?
Did I say?
You said March 14th.
Sorry, thank you for letting me know that. Today is March 18th, 2025. I will slow down. Senate Institutions, and we are reviewing H219. And before we get to our review, let us introduce ourselves.
Senator Ross Ingalls, Essex District. Hi, everyone.
Senator Joe Major, Windsor District.
And Rob Puckett, Bennington District.
Senator Solis County.
And Wendy Harrison, I'm from the Wyndham District, and we're just gonna ask what folks around the room.
Sure. Becky Lewandowski. I work with DRM and working with Lund this session.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kim LaRoche. I'm the Director of Parent-Child Center Services at Lund. We're Kids Apart. It's a program.
And I'm Ken Schatz. I'm the interim CEO at Lund.
Jess Kellum, the Kids Apart Coordinator at Lund.
Isaac Daniel, the DOC Policy Director.
Haley Summer, DOC Communications Director.
Okay, terrific. So for the committee, we're going to have copies of H219, how it came out of the House. We'll have that in the next few minutes. So we have on our agenda, Haley, you're going first. Is that how you'd like to do it?
I think we're actually going to have Lana to go first today since they have a presentation.
Okay, so whoever wants to go first.
Yeah.
Here's the chair. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Ken Schatz. I'm the interim CEO at Lund. Really appreciate you taking the time to consider this bill. I'm going to be brief and quickly give way to people who are more knowledgeable about the program proposal that we're making. But I will say that, we really appreciate the partnership that we've had with the Department of Corrections to provide currently a family support program for the women in the Women's Correctional Facility in Chittenden County. And that has been a successful program. You'll hear more about it in our presentation, but the basic idea here is to continue support for that program, but also to work towards expansion into men's facilities. Recognizing that fathers or parents too, and the needs are real. And I believe that this type of program that we provide, Kids Apart program, will be really beneficial, both to the parents and also, very importantly, the children of incarcerated people. So the idea was essentially to propose that it's twofold: to provide financial support for the women's program, but also some money to initiate a new program for men in Newport. And that came about in collaboration with the Department of Corrections, because there was, as you may know, an advisory committee that looked at visitation issues in our correction facilities. A lot of work was done to recognize that, yes, there's a need. And in fact, the determination was made that Newport would in fact be a good place to start if we're going to expand these programs. So again, we've worked very collaboratively. There is a bill that was considered by the House Corrections Committee. It is literally, I think, on the floor today. Very helpfully, the Department of Corrections and folks from the Appropriations Committee on the House side identified a funding source. Justice Reinvestment Funds and others can speak more knowledgeably again than me, but essentially there is money that is in the base budget for the Department of Corrections to pay for the proposals here. Obviously a significant factor to consider. So I'm going to just stop there and let Kim and Jess describe the program so you have some knowledge. And obviously we're glad to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, so let me just to be clear. So the funding has been so no additional funding would be necessary if the funding that has been identified is sufficient.
That is my understanding. In fact, what you'll see when you get a copy of the notice counter on the House side today, originally that was not so clear. So there was an appropriation included in the bill, but literally on the notice counter is proposed to delete that section of H219 because in fact, funding source has been identified without the need for a new appropriation.
Great. That's good news.
Appreciate that. Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Jess.
Jesse, you want to go down? Well, I have a PowerPoint presentation, so I have the Zoom link. I understand I have to click and then
Yes,
be given permission to share.
Right, and,
Okay.
she needs to.
You can start
Kayla needs to
talking
be
and once
back.
you come
Okay.
in, we can. All right, so my name is Kim LaRoche. I am the Director of Parent-Child Center Services at Lund. One of those programs under that division is Kids Apart Parenting Program.
And I'm Jess Kell. I'm the Kids Apart Parenting Program Coordinator, and I'm based inside the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility.
Lund has a mission to help children thrive by empowering families to break cycles of poverty, addiction, and abuse. And as I mentioned, Kids Apart is one of those programs working with families with children.
So the goal of this program is to reduce the impact, the traumatic impact on a child when a parent is incarcerated. Kids Apart has been providing services inside the women's facilities since 2003. It was originally a program of the Vermont Children's Aid Society and has been a Lund program since 2011. The work that we do inside the facility, originally with the summer study, what we were asked to look at was visitation. And what we really advocated for as the Kids Apart program is that in order to support visitation, we really have to work with these parents. We're going to have visits on Saturday. We need to be working with these parents Monday through Friday to really support them in their development as parents, supporting their case management needs. If DCF is involved, we're there to help support communication with DCF so that can be ensuring that a parent has all of the documentation connected to their child, that they have the ability to participate in team meetings, that they're available for family court. We're able to facilitate family court through our office, which is one of the things that currently in the correctional facilities, there's a lot of conversation around access to court, and family court is not one of the hearings that the incarcerated individuals are currently able to access through the regular facility systems. So that's something that we're able to work with. What we know is that about 6,000 children in Vermont each year are impacted by having a parent connected to the Department of Corrections. So we're talking about a significant number of Vermont children whose really very unique needs are not being met. We know that it's 1/3 of the children that are currently having visits. Our program works to increase visitation by supporting those families. We utilize funds to support the families with gas cards and when appropriate hotel rooms to make it easier for them to come to the facility.
Are you okay with questions as we go along?
Absolutely.
Which was a question. So is it okay if we go back to the, so, I'm interested to know if you know why, or have some idea why we house more parents than the national average? Because that's a pretty big difference, 52% versus 64%.
So I haven't looked into the research behind it. There's the UVM, there's individuals who have specifically worked with incarcerated individuals that we could tap into to see if they have any more depth on it. Yeah, no, it's a great question.
That's okay. It's just really interesting. And then the 81% of parents lived with or frequently visited their children before incarceration. That really shows the importance of this program.
Yeah.
Because you want to keep that connection.
Later in the slide, we did a survey, DSC did a survey in Newport, and it shows the men who were actively connected to the children prior to incarceration, which reflects on track with this.
Right.
They're involved, both
Right.
mothers and fathers.
And then your last bullet too, only 1/3 visit them, so that your goal is to increase that. I would say, right.
To increase that when appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a variety of reasons why
Right.
they're not.
Yeah.
Some things that we can help support.
Okay.
And we address issues of parent-child contact, so not just visitation, but parent-child contact also includes video visitation, writing cards and letters, sending mail to children. So we're looking at all forms of parent-child contact.
Senator Ingalls has a question.
district style, you say 6,000 kids, there's 1,000 people incarcerated in the state of Vermont, so is there how many? I mean, so you say about 6,000 kids, I was wondering how you arrived at that number.
So we're talking about, we're talking about children who have incarcerated parents and also parents who are under supervision of the Department of Corrections on, through the Field Services Unit.
So it's home incarceration, is that what you're talking about?
Probation.
I think it's what we're-
Okay.
Right. So it's, yeah.
Good question.
It is a partnership between, so we're contracted to provide these services through the Department of Corrections, and we do work very closely with the department in providing these services. Part of my responsibility inside the facility is to provide the direct service, to work with the families. It's also to work very closely with the facility management and the staff of the facility so that we're providing child-centered, family-focused services within a correctional setting. So we have to build relationships with those DOC staff in order to do that.
And I've been there. You do a really good job. It's still heart rendering, just because it can not be, in my opinion, but it's really good that you're there.
Thank you. So we seek to, again, we're trying to provide really well-rounded services to these families. We want to help increase the parents' knowledge and their parenting skills. We want to increase their capacity and resources to nurture. We want to provide that visitation space. We're working on outreach to the caregivers, in addition to a case manager inside the facility. We also have a case manager in the community who works with the caregivers. So we're really not just providing support to that incarcerated parent, but to the whole family. And many times that's about working on communication, really supporting these families. And there may not be communication between the incarcerated individual and the caregiver of the children. So where has that broken down? Are there ways that we can support that if it's appropriate? The majority of incarcerated individuals will return to the community. And so we want to provide support for when that parent returns to the community so that they really have some solid foundations of learning under their belt before that happens.
Right. Now, when you say support, can you be specific what that support is and how it's manifesting?
Yeah. So number one, it's individualized. Every family that we work with presents with very unique needs. So it starts with an intake with each individual client and learning about their family and what are the needs. Is the child with their other parent? Are they with a family member? Are they in DCF custody? Is this a child where it hasn't been determined who's going to care for them in mom's absence or dad's absence? Are they temporarily staying somewhere and there isn't really a permanent plan in place yet? So from that first moment, we are working with those families. Does this parent, what do they identify as their own strengths? What do they identify as the areas where they'd like to work on things? We're encouraging them to work with these substance abuse programs in the facility, with mental health, with job training. So when I work with a parent, I'm very much looking at not just what are their parenting skills, but what are their all around areas of well-being that they could be working on, and how can we work with the other programs as well to look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess the most important thing is it working?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I feel very strongly about this program. I've been the coordinator for 17 years. And I said full-time in the facility. We don't have a magic wand. We have no guarantee that we are going to magically fix any situation. But what we have is the ability to meet people where they are to hold space for them during a very difficult and challenging period in their life, and to offer them, to offer to support them in their goals and help them identify how they're going to meet those goals.
Do we have some data that as far as, I tell you what.
Yeah.
How about if I let you finish your presentation? You probably will answer every question that I had going for it. So Senator Major's going to shut up for a little while and I'll just let you continue.
I'm also good with questions.
You haven't started this last one.
And cross-service coordination. So we work, again, very closely with DCF. We work with the other programs inside the facility. Whoever out in the community is connected to a child and that child's caregivers, we're there to support communication. So, for example, this week I was working with a mom whose child, a teenager, wants to change schools. And the mom said to me, I'd like to reach out to the assistant principal and talk to them about how we're going to support my kid who's interested in switching schools. What's that going to look like? So Mom and I wrote an email together. We sent it off to the assistant principal. We set up a time to meet. Unfortunately, he was out sick. We have to reschedule. But those are the kinds of things that we're focused on supporting families around. And right now, that is something that incarcerated fathers have no access to.
Wow. All right. This is really good. Thank you. Yeah.
So this is an overview. I've sort of been talking about all these things. As I mentioned, some parents arrive at a facility with a family where there's a lot of unknowns about what will happen with a child. Sometimes DCF has become involved at the time of arrest or shortly before incarceration. We begin with an orientation. The first thing we want parents to know is the very basics of parenting from prison. What are the most important things I need? If I'm only going to meet with you once, what information can I give you in 1 hour to support you as a parent? We have an intake and an assessment process. Again, that individualized programming. We keep our clients connected to the folks out in the community. We develop a family service plan for each individual parent. When DCF is involved, there may be a point in time when DCF decides that a plan will turn to adoption. So a lot of support for the parents around their engagement in their DCF plans and what do we do when the state says we're going to terminate your parental rights, and what kind of support can we provide for those parents? And that support is really about listening a lot of the time. We work with the correctional staff. I do a training for each new group of correctional officers that return from the academy. We talk to them about the impact of incarceration on children and what does a child experience when they enter a correctional facility. We talk to the officers about law enforcement being helpers and what it means to appear to a child as a helper in uniform versus a person that they may be afraid of because of experiences that they've already had in their life. So a lot of the little things I talk to them about are that I never ask a child to walk through the metal detector. I say, can we walk through this archway? A million little things like that about in the way that those impact children when they come in the facility. We work with pregnant women, and in our vision of expanding into working with the men, when there's a baby on the way, that's a significant shift in a parent's life. So what support can we provide to dads who are expecting new babies in their family? And then out in the community, again, we're working with those caregivers to provide them with access to support as well. And we also provide training statewide. Anyone who works with children who have incarcerated parents. So educators, healthcare providers, Head Start, preschool teachers, school nurses, anyone you can think of that works with children. We are, as well as DCF offices and PNP offices. So we're out there really talking about the impact of incarceration on children and how we can best support Vermont's children that are impacted this way.
Before you go to the next slide, I'm sorry, never mind, go to the next slide. To answer my question, I will sit with Senator Major over in the corner.
Yeah. It's good to ask questions. It's okay.
So as Ken introduced in the beginning, what we are looking for is for support for Bill H-219, which would provide the funds necessary to fully fund the current Kids Apart program in the Women's Correctional Facility and to expand into one of the men's facility. As Jess spoke, she has been the Kids Apart coordinator for many years, and it's only been in the Women's Correctional Facility. And so to expand it to support incarcerated fathers has been something that we've been discussing for many years now. So the current DOC contract that we have doesn't fully fund the cost because it is case management on the inside and case management on the outside. The DOC budget just doesn't currently provide that in the contract. So it would make it fiscally whole, the current CRCF contract, and then funds to expand into a new facility. Again, providing case management in the inside, a case manager on the outside, and within the facility, there's a part-time, we call it a visitation coach, and that visitation coach actually engages in those Saturday group visits, the one-on-one visits. We also have what we call storybook, where the parent can read a book, and that is taped and then sent to the family. So, and the book is mailed, so the child can be looking at the storybook and hearing mom and hopefully dad's voice.
That's wonderful. Can I, so the dollar amounts there.
Yeah.
So currently it's 161,338. I'm gonna round.
Yeah.
That's what DOC, that's the total of your contract?
Yes.
Because I'm surprised that you can do all those things for that
Well, we can't.
amount.
There's
Well,
an
we're
additional,
even close to that.
there's an additional 150,000 that is needed. And we do that through fundraising, finding grants and opportunities, but nothing that's ongoing. It's something that we have to search for and
Right.
find each year to keep that program going.
So do you use volunteers?
So we do have volunteers that work on some of the Saturday group visits. It's alongside a staff who has all the access,
Right.
the paid training. But we have tapped into having some volunteers.
Okay, so then what was the, you're just doing so much with so little. I'm really impressed with that. So the 268 minus the 115 is the amount that you would need for the men's.
No, the 268 is what is needed to start a new program in the men's facility.
Okay, so that's just by itself.
Yeah.
And is that a whole year of the
That's
service?
correct, yeah.
Okay, and then this is a couple of things. When you said you have access to family court,
Mhm.
is that, what does that mean?
So, when an individual, an incarcerated individual has family court, so let's say it's a DCF case. Most of those are DCF case. Typically the DCF worker would let me know there's going to be court on March 28th. So if I'm available, I will facilitate that mom's participation in court from my office. We have one of the court minis in Kids Apart, and the commissioner has given permission for me to facilitate those hearings.
So it's by Zoom.
It's
Or-
WebEx and it's on a court-owned
It's
device.
virtual, yeah.
Okay, so the ones I've seen are bigger, but so it's not one, that's why it's
This is
called
like a
mini, I guess.
kind of like a little iPad built into a little thing.
Okay, I was hoping that it was more in person because just that would be ideal, but
They get transported for, I wish it was in person too. They get transported to TPR hearings.
okay. Okay,
The difference between being able to participate and not being able to participate is huge.
So those are their choices? Being able to participate or not?
No,
Or-
but so for example, I
Okay.
may have a mother in my office who is able to participate in family court because I'm there to facilitate it. And there's not a counterpart in the men's facilities.
Okay, so you're helping the mother with the process, basically, is that,
I'm ensuring that she can attend court and the
Okay.
dads don't.
okay?
There can be a TPR hearing if that is not.
Well, TPRs, they always get.
Termination of parental rights.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's why.
So other hearings, TPRs, they are always, almost always transported to.
Good, I mean, that's huge, taking
But it's-
parental rights, right?
But if decisions are being made about the permanency of a child, we are talking about the rest of that child's life. And mom, through the Kids Apart program, has the ability. So we're talking about one, so we have, do we say we have 6 facilities or 7? 7. We have 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 6 facilities in the state of Vermont. The incarcerated individuals in one of those facilities has the ability to attend family court. The individuals in the other 5 currently don't have that same access.
Wow, okay,
They
so
can
that's
attend-
something that.
They can
we'll
talk on the
about more.
phone if their lawyer
Oh,
contacts them and gets them on the phone in court, but if that doesn't happen, they're not there.
That's for the case management, that Jess does a lot of work to make those connections and make sure that we've got the way to get into these meetings.
So this is where it becomes this is a really critical issue of access and of equity and parity.
I can see that. Thank you.
And it's ultimately the children who we want these parents to have this access, but we're ultimately talking about ways that decisions are made about children without their parents being able to have input. It's
Thank
not,
you for telling us about this.
if I facilitate what's called a shared parenting meeting, mom is able to participate with me. Dad in a men's facility does not have that access. So it's very common for me to facilitate meetings with the mom. And there's also an incarcerated dad and he's not present for those meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
So the expansion of Kids Apart into one of the men's facilities would, in a lot of ways, mirror what has been successful in the women's facility. So that orientation and intake, it's for fathers upon incarceration, identifying those who want to participate in Kids Apart, making sure they're aware of that program. That case management that's provided inside the facilities, the community case management for the caregivers of children who are in the community. That family-friendly visitation space is really necessary to be able to create an environment that children feel safe to come into and visit. Parent education groups. So this is something that is important, as Jess said. If there's a visitation on Saturday, it's the work that is done Monday through Friday to prepare them for that. So we have parent education groups that are offered quarterly. The topic based off of who is incarcerated, what the needs are. We've got a rotation of parent education classes to provide. I had mentioned Storybook, which is the reading of a book. Dad's Mail, it would mirror what we do. It's called Mom's Mail. It's a way that parents can make connections to their children, writing letters, drawings.
And just to add that, there's times when we start out with a client and what we find out is visitation is not going to be supported at this time. It's been a while. There are some issues. It's maybe the child's not ready for visits. And the recommendation might be to the parent, let's have you start off by sending mail home each week, right? So on the surface, it's an art group that I do every week and bring a bunch of parents together and provide supplies. But really the deeper thing there is we are helping those parents learn how to be consistent. And sometimes we have to start at the most basic level. We're going to start by a letter home, a really simple letter home each week. And we're going to build that consistency.
Oh, I'm sure that's impactful. Too. I mean, it's not a small thing.
And the mailing of books, the mailing of letters, that is not a charge that the incarcerated parent has to incur. That's something that is covered with Kids Apart. If not through Kids Apart, mail, virtual visits, phone calls, all have an expense.
I was gonna ask that to the department actually, if they were in charge. So
Not
So,
what is through Kids
do
Apart.
you have to pay that charge then instead?
So, that's part of through their contract as far as.
So I
the
can ask
mail,
all
But
of
yeah,
them.
I was gonna
Okay.
say that the Zoom is something that Lund holds. It's a Zoom account.
Okay.
But speaking of that, the virtual visits, so yes, we do have weekly group in-person visits. We also have on occasion special one-on-one visits. But we have weekly virtual visits offered as well. So again, there could be, they could have a virtual visit on Tuesday and then an in-person visit on Saturday. Or maybe they're not having in-person visits, but that virtual visit weekly is a step towards establishing and keeping those connections.
Just another question on that. So can they do actual phone calls that don't include video?
They can. I recommend video over, I used to do phone calls prior to the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, we began using video. I was one of the first contractors allowed back into the facility because of the value that the Department of Corrections put on the moms having contact with their children. So we use video. I think what's really important is that a lot of communication is nonverbal. So it's not just that with what's being said, but it's the look on somebody's face and a child saying, this is what I made today.
Right.
And I'm eating soup. And it's all, you need all of that you need the video to be able, it enhances communication.
Right.
There may be a circumstance where a phone call, and the moms certainly will make phone calls from their units, and that happens during the week, but we want to get as much face-to-face time as we possibly can.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
We'd want to ensure that, safety protocols and procedures for the children visiting their incarcerated father are established. There's a variety of reasons why men are incarcerated. So that would be a factor to take into consideration. And then that last one, that collaboration with community partners, both inside and outside the facility. There's that cross collaboration, DCF, schools, courts, with Network on Domestic Violence, Guardian ad litems, the list that we shared there. Yeah.
In terms of safety, our staff are trained to work inside correctional facilities. So we bring that experience and that understanding. So it's not just, so there's a lot about being inside of a facility that we have to understand of security policies and procedures in order to do our jobs.
This, there's a couple of slides through a survey that was conducted back in December to the incarcerated men in Newport. And we wanted to get some current data on who reports being a father and what their interests, what their connections are with their children prior to incarceration, currently while incarcerated, and their interest in the parenting programs that Kids Apart. So Lund did not hold this survey, DOC did. And so out of the respondents at Northern, 98 reported being parents of minor children. Out of those 98 parents, before going to jail, the majority were living with their children, either all of the time or some of the time. And then many have either full or shared custody. So the slide shows that of incarcerated fathers, many are involved with their children's lives. This next slide is just asking if their child is on their approved calling list and the visitation list. 68 said yes to calls, 48 says yes to visiting. Prior to incarceration, this question asks about contact with your child. 88% had contact, some sort of contact with their children. And then down below in the table, it talks about what kind of visitation. Again, a majority, living with their child or visiting with their children. And then post-incarceration or while they're incarcerated, video visits, 50% had video visits, 68% right to their children, and 73% do check in one way or another with the child's caregiver.
And that's what they are doing now.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's interesting that we say jail. So are these detainees and sentenced people?
There are certainly some challenges to the child that visiting their dad, and this is what was identified through the survey. Distance being a top reason, lack of transportation, not having somebody to bring the child, maybe the caregiver is not supporting the visit. These are the top 4.
So the first two are very similar, the distance and lack of reliable
Yeah.
transportation.
I mean, but somebody could live closer but not have the transportation.
True.
So it's not distance.
True.
But you're right. I mean, it's transportation.
I'm just
issues.
transportation.
Yeah, that's. And there are some things that Kids at Heart can do to help break down these barriers, and that's what the case managers inside and the community work on. So if it is distance, and they do have transportation, is there a hotel close to the area? If the visit is at 9 o'clock in the morning and they live 2.5 hours away, that's an early morning to get that child up and then ready to visit the dad. And so we can bring them in the night before to be in the area. If it's a financial, issues with the gas, we can support that. Nobody able to bring my child. That's where the community case manager works with those caregivers and that family to identify who else in your community might we be able to connect with, that the child would feel supported by, you would feel safe with, to help engage in that.
And I think you said this, but can you do weekends?
That's when our group visits are. Yeah.
Good. Because some of the facilities have fewer staff on the weekends. But, okay.
When this program, so Kids Apart has been in a few different, the women have moved around the state. So when we start in a new facility, that early planning process is talking to the facility about when does it make sense for us to do a child only visit. So these are visits that adults don't come into. It's the children get dropped off and our staff bring them in. That visits with their dads.
Great.
When asking the incarcerated fathers what they might be interested in with regards to parenting supports, the top 2 were video calls as well as in-person family-friendly visitation. They're also interested in case management and parent education, and just that support of how to have an age-appropriate conversation with their child about where they are. So there's interest in thinking some parent education and awareness and how to best support their child as they're navigating a really complex family situation. There's statistics that show the benefit of parenting programs for the family. Reduces recidivism, less intergenerational criminal justice system involvement, and helps promote the healthy child development. For fathers specifically who are incarcerated, a decrease in violence and over-aggressive behaviors, successful reintegration, and decrease of the chance of recidivism. And for the children, being able to have visitations and connections with their incarcerated parents helps improve their self-esteem, their mental health, their well-being, academic performance, and decrease that truancy and delinquency. So there's a variety of research and evidence that shows parenting programs do good work.
That's terrific. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think this actually might be the last slide. One of the questions that you had asked in the beginning was, how do we know if this is gonna work? And so we have, taken some time to think about how we would evaluate that. We've had a really good discussion and connection with UVM, who has a team that works with incarcerated individuals throughout Vermont. They're excited to be with us on this journey, and there's no additional funding that is needed for them to engage in our research experience with us, but they would welcome the opportunity to connect, to gather data. We want to do some pre-survey to the incarcerated fathers that come in to just gauge that baseline connection with their children currently, how often they're connecting, how is the communication with the caregivers or DCF, and their readiness to discuss their incarceration with their children. So that's at that intake. We want to do some incremental ongoing surveying of fathers as well. How do they feel their parenting skills are as far as their connection to their children and how it's benefited from accessing Kids Apart? We want to track the number of participants who are enrolled in Kids Apart and stay engaged, right? So if we've got a lot who enroll and then many who fall off, that probably would show that maybe we need to tweak something. But if fathers are engaging and sustaining, that would show some success. We also want to connect with caregivers as well at that initial home visit to gauge their response on their understanding of the range of Kids Apart supports that are offered. If they feel better prepared to engage with children and discuss parental incarceration in an age-appropriate way, and know how to access services and resources. And then at the exit. So for caregivers, when Kids Apart is no longer a part of that family's team, measuring the length of contact and engagement that they've had with Kids Apart, and the caregiver's response to feeling like they were supported to care for the children while dad was incarcerated. So those are just some ways that we feel like we would be able to measure the success of an expansion of Kids Apart into the men's facility.
Any other? I'm thinking about the corrections officers and them seeing the incarcerated folks as kids. It brings a different perspective. You see the person,
Yeah.
family, right?
Yes.
I would think would be beneficial, or I don't know, I'm
At the correctional facility, the women's correctional facility, we have, a correctional officer who helps with the intake. And then there's somebody who's also supervising the visitation. They sit in a relaxed way. They're, just being aware of their presence. I don't know if there's any specific that DOC has as far as what the correctional officers feel. Kids Apart.
That would be an interesting survey as well. What are their feelings before the program starts, and then 6 months in, what is their experience of the program being in their facility?
I would say in general, when you speak to correctional officers, they're some of the stronger opponents of additional rehabilitative programming for incarcerated people. They spend so much time with these folks. And they often say, like, can't we get more things for them to do, more vocational training, more family support, more addiction supports? And so I think when we, for example, when we started rolling out the Turning Point coaching, especially at Southern State, I remember going down, just talking to our facility staff down there who were so appreciative that we were able to connect individuals in custody with that resource. So next time you visit a correctional facility, certainly encourage you to talk with staff about what they would like to see offered to incarcerated folks.
right. They would just see the people as more than themselves. Okay. Any other? Thank you. This has been very helpful.
Thank you.
And when we go through the bill itself, we may have questions, but we've learned a lot. Thank you for your time. I think do you want to say? Sit back here. Great. Okay.
For the record, my name's Haley Summer. I'm the Director of Communications for DOC. I think mostly just here to answer any questions that you have about the impact to DOC facilities or our perspective on the bill. But generally, just want to note the really important work that LUND's Kids Apart program does. I think to Senator Major's question about the efficacy of the program. We do receive, it's either like quarterly or biannually data reports from Kids Apart about the women who utilize the program. And I believe a majority, if not all of them, have all said that the program has dramatically improved, their ability to parent and their education around parenting while incarcerated. And something that we would certainly like to see for the men in our system as well. So I know one of the things that we've talked about in this room is visiting the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility because we are trying to replace it. So at any time when we do set up that tour, happy to show you what that space looks like. It's very distinct from other areas of the correctional facility, very distinct from all of the areas that we saw at Southern State a few months ago. Jess and her team have done a really amazing job of making that space seem different for a child that is going into a correctional setting and making that experience less traumatic as it would be if they were going to a general visitation area. To talk about the Northern State Correctional Facility and why we identified that. So Lund had touched upon a family study advisory committee, which took place last year, essentially just studying family visitation throughout the system, which right now really only exists at Chittenden Regional in terms of extra accommodations on top of regular visiting. And we had identified Northern State as the next kind of place that might be best to implement some sort of family visitation programming for several reasons. One of which is the size of the facility. So it's larger than other facilities around the state in terms of population as well as the physical footprint of it. And the visiting space is more equipped to accommodate a program like this, as opposed to some of the smaller regional facilities like Marble Valley and Northeast. Additionally, most of the men who are at Northern State are sentenced, whereas some of the other facilities, like Northeast, Marble Valley, and Northwest, have a large proportion of detainees. So they may not be able to utilize the service in the same way as men at Northern State would be able to. I think that's all I have to say about the physical footprint, but we did survey the men who live at Northern State, as they touched upon last December, to kind of see what folks might be interested in. And the capacity to survey our population is something that we can certainly do now, can do before that program gets started up, as well as our staff to kind of see what their perspective is when the program starts, as well as a couple months into it and seeing their perspective. One of the things that we do hear from our correctional staff is that they'll see generations of families cycle through the correctional system. So if they're there for long enough, they might meet someone, then their children, then their grandchildren. One of the things that Kids Apart would provide them with is kind of hope in their work and knowing that they are disrupting the cycle of intergenerational incarceration. And so that's something that our staff, I believe, would be very supportive of to see. So it's not only an investment in the women and men who are incarcerated and their children, but also an investment in alternatives to incarceration in the state of Vermont. And we know that the cost of incarcerating someone is very costly. So happy to answer any questions that you all have for DOC or how we can accommodate the space to the program.
I just have a couple. The survey that you did of the fathers, any of the verifiable information, was it actually verified? Like simply, do you have kids if it was accurate?
Don't think we would have had mechanisms to verify that information.
I just wanted to make sure what I was looking at. And the other question I had is, so this has been happening in the women's facility since 2011. Why do we need a law for this?
Yeah, I will answer both of those questions. Okay. The first thing I would know, I see Jess raising her hand in the back. It's been at the South Burlington facility since 2011, but the program itself has served the women since 2003. And we know that incarcerated women in the state of Vermont have been kind of shuffled throughout facilities over time. They've never had a space which is dedicated to serve women. The reason why, so I know that I think your question is really speaking to the beginning of the bill, which states that a pilot would be established at Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. Obviously, it already exists.
Yeah.
DOC sees the value in it. It's not something that we intend to discontinue anytime soon. I believe that the intent was to just codify the program, as well as some of the legal language about calling it a pilot as opposed to something else. I think that was something that Ledge Council had kind of worked through when they were drafting the bill. But expanding it to Northern State, I think it's just another way of like codifying the intent of expanding the program, as well as the vehicle for requesting some of that funding for it, because it was not something that DOC had previously in its budget.
Okay, but it's now in the budget. So did I hear correctly that the House is going to strip out the appropriation
Yeah.
before it actually gets here?
So the original request in the bill was 400,000 in the state's general fund, which was not in the governor's recommended budget. However, DOC and House Appropriations did identify around $390,000 in justice reinvestment funds. And so those funds are already allocated. They just haven't been allocated to a specific entity. They're kind of just floating around, but they'd already been appropriated. And the benefit of using justice reinvestment funds would also go towards base funding. So it would not only be just 1 year, which the funding originally in the bill would have just gone towards 1 year. It will kind of sustain the program year after year.
Well, that was a good thing to find, huh? Okay, are we good? This has been great. Thank you all for what you've already done, and it's could be really impactful for those families. Thank you.
Thank you. Said, if when you get to actually looking at the bill language itself, we'll have to come back and answer
Yeah.
any questions you have about the details, including, your question about, why does it need to be codified?
Okay.
And I think that, Haley gave a good answer. We can certainly talk more to that if that's helpful.
And our next visit to a facility is planned to be the Chittenden.
Yeah, I think it'd be great for you guys to see that space, because it really is different from all of the areas that we toured at Southern State a few months ago. And it also kind of speaks to the importance of replacing the facility, because
Yeah.
while they've done a really great job of retrofitting what they have to work with, it could certainly be dramatically different moving forward.
Yeah.
And as has been shared in House Corrections and Institutions, when there are maintenance issues with that building, it can have severe impacts on Jess's work, on Lund's work, which are very detrimental to children.
Yeah, and something that I believe was experienced rather recently. I think it was the day after Christmas that the kids are part of the space had flooded.
It was flooded with sewage.
Oh, my gosh. That is not a welcoming
Okay.
environment. That is all, I'm sorry.
That's not the Christmas present you want.
No. All right, it's true. Well, thank you so much for being here and thank you for your work.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So that is all that we have on the agenda. Is there anything else that folks want to discuss?
How are we doing on the capital bill?
Fine. I mean, it's coming along. We'll get it soon. We have gone over some sections. We'll obviously get to that. We can do that on Thursday and Friday. We'll do capital bill items. Okay. Any other?
I'm glad you asked that. The other thing, is that visit. What would you think you'd wanna have them?
I think, well, last time we did a Friday, so we should just pick a day, Friday or Monday. I presume we don't want to go on the weekend. We could do a late afternoon visit because it's less than an hour away. It's about 45 minutes away. So we could do an afternoon and they're all the time, So we could go, especially when it's getting lighter.
Sure. The thing I'm just concerned about is we're gonna begin to get really fast with stuff. Just, so I just want to make sure for you with capital bill, is that picture that we have, it's not down time. That's, but it's about a little less. Maybe after. We know how many bills we have for crosses.
I think just these two, this one and H50, and then that, after that is capital bills.
Okay. So.
So we'll definitely be able to fit everything in.
Yeah, I just want to, because, I've talked to some, house members concerning, where they are in Essex. And, for the women's.
Mhm.
And, I'm actually going to probably a couple of weeks visit the proposed sites there as well.
Oh, well, why don't you let us know and we
Yeah,
can do a group?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Because I'm just getting, plugged into that, you know, so, I'll, you know, share what they have as well. You know, I just, this is the women's prison, quite frankly, I just, in this last little bit, it's kind of, solidified how I felt. You know, it is, it's abhorrent.
you need to see it.
Yeah,
You
it is
need to see it.
abhorrent. I mean, just what I've seen,
Yes,
but it is abhorrent that, this is what we have, in the state.
yes.
And so, I just want to make sure that and I understand that it's going to be several years that it's going to take, but if we don't start now, it's going to go out further. So I want to make sure that we, keep it on our radar and we can work on that. I don't, there's only so much we can do right now. We're waiting for the House, as well as Essex, zoning. But if we can begin to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah, we can go see it soon, in the next couple of weeks. Then there's also, there's a group that is opposed to any prisons, and they will be here this week. I don't
Okay.
remember what day it is.
Is that,
The Free Her
Free Her,
folks.
yeah.
So that you might want to put that on your radar too.
Yeah, I. Okay,
Never a dull day.
okay. Yeah, you know, I would like to. Voir dire, is that what they, is that, okay,
I think that would be applicable.
yes. All right, that's a lawyer term.
I know,
terms
a lot of short things.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what it means.
Neither do I just heard it on, my cousin Vinny.
Well, something about seeing, yeah, to see something.
I think it's like something.
Oh, okay.
To
It's
say
the
church
water. Oh, to see church.
from the old French.
Look at you.
What was it?
Look
Look at you.
at you and Google.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
going back to data privacy.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else, or did you? What's it?
No, I
Okay. Okay, so thank you, committee. And